only homeschooling. In our homeschool, we have a motto: education is a journey, not a destination. So relax, it's only homeschooling. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the podcast. My name is Kimberly Bennett, and I am your host. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for giving us a listen. A little bit about me. I am a licensed professional counselor turned homeschool mom of 1. I am also an advocate for homeschooling children with learning differences. For more of my story and background, feel free to listen to episode 1 or check out my website at itsonlyhomeschooling.com. In episode 4, I shared some of my family's early experiences with undiagnosed developmental coordination disorder and the challenges we faced with obtaining a correct diagnosis. I also shared how lack of awareness and available educational supports contributed to our family's decision to homeschool. Finally, I talked about how isolation can occur when you are the parent of a child with learning challenges that, while statistically prevalent, is often relatively unknown in the medical and educational community. While my quick recap of these life experiences sounds pretty grim here, trust me, there is a silver lining, a rainbow after the storm. My need to find a support network, or tribe as I affectionately refer to it, led me to another amazing mom who not only shared my journey, but who also felt called to put on her advocate hat and become a resource for other parents facing similar challenges. Sue Hille of DCD Kids. In episode 4 of our podcast, we introduced you to Sue and learned about the events that led to the creation of her website, DCD Kids, a website dedicated to raising awareness of developmental coordination disorder through the pillars of awareness, advocacy, action, and achievement. Sue graciously shared her story and offered us encouragement for when we face the difficult days. Today, in episode 5, we continue our chat with Sue and learn about some exciting new developments in the works for DCD Kids. On my website, one of the things I talk about is the roles we play as parents, and we wear so many hats. We are teacher, we are nurturer, we are coach, we are so many different things. But now, especially with our kids, we also have to put on a new hat, and that's our advocate hat. So it feels like our children can sort of fall through the cracks on so many different areas. Can you speak to or share some of your advocacy efforts that you have been pretty successful with, I would say, just from reading your blog, how you have found that courage, which we have very deep within us as mamas, especially because mess with our cubs and we are immediately become a lioness, that you have had where you have had to find your courage, go in, make those statements, make those changes in with the school system, and sort of maybe advise others as to how they can also put on their advocate hats.
Sure. So I think a big thing for me was we had a DCD diagnosis. We had been through a series of assessments with the occupational therapist. We had gone to a pediatrician who didn't seem terribly familiar with DCD and was looking for a lot of other things as well, and sort of and we said, well, let's deal with what we know here. And I did a lot of asking around to find a doctor who was familiar with DCD, and so we went to that doctor. I asked a number of other parents and service providers, occupational therapists that we were using, who they would recommend, and I found a fabulous pediatrician who remains a member of our team to this day, and he has been really supportive on our DCD journey and helping us to understand the condition. And he's that rare medical professional who says, you're having a meeting with the school, I'll call in, I will help them understand this, and it has been an absolute And it's been an absolute gift. Now, DCD can be diagnosed through, as you know, assessments through your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, and then your pediatrician. We're in a school system who kept asking us for a diagnosis from the main health centre that was attached to the Children's Hospital here in BC. There's the Sunny Hill Centre, and there is one of the main DCD researchers. She has a DCD clinic there that she does in addition to her research, and unfortunately it has very, very long wait lists. So I was dealing with the school, and I was having a lot of requests for another diagnosis from this different clinic, and I would speak to that clinic, and they would say, you don't need us to diagnose, you already have a diagnosis from your pediatrician. So it was, I actually I went above my school. I made an appointment with the district head of support. Again, as I'm a very conflict averse person, and that was very outside of my box. But I went in there and I spoke to her, and I said, I understand this is your policy. Why is this your policy? This is a legitimate diagnosis from a pediatrician. And if you won't accept diagnosis except from this one place, children are waiting on wait lists for a number of years, and they need help. They need interventions now. And the wonderful thing that clinic does, they recognise that there is a demand and that they have a long wait list, and they themselves are trying to bridge that gap by, they will talk to parents and say, we have kits that we can give you to help with the school, or that they can then provide to medical professionals, particularly if your doctor isn't familiar with it or isn't familiar with how to diagnose it. They have information that they can then provide to the medical professionals if they need any assistance in diagnosis as well. So that's a wonderful thing to know, because it's important. Early intervention is important and can have such a vast difference in the outcomes for our kids if they get help sooner.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be quite overwhelming at times to go into the doctor's office and be insistent. Yes. But it's absolutely necessary. And as I've said to more than one parent, if you're pushing for, always trust your parent instincts. Mm-hmm. Always trust them. And if you're working with a physician that is not willing to listen to you, then it's time to change physicians.
You bet.
So always trust your parent instinct. Always trust. Well, in the spirit of the pillars that you have on your website of awareness, advocacy, action, and achievement, I would like to talk a little more about action efforts, because that is where I definitely see that we need some improvement here in the States. In speaking with so many different families of children with DCD, I have been met with sort of mixed results on how their children receive supports in public education. We are a homeschool family. This is our 4th year of homeschooling, and we actually chose to homeschool out of part desire, but also part necessity. If you had asked me when my son was born that if I was going to homeschool him, I would have looked at you like you had a peacock on your head, because it was never remotely on my radar. However, our experiences as he got older and we started to notice the learning differences, and my personal background in professional counseling and in public education, I knew that DCD was not included under the umbrella of what we have here in the States known as our special education law, known as the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. I knew that the diagnosis was not specifically covered. We have dyscalculia, dyslexia, dysgraphia. Those 3 are covered, but those are actually classified as learning disabilities, whereas DCD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, much in the same category as ADHD. So oftentimes what I found in speaking with other families is kind of a mixed group. Some families have 0 coverage whatsoever, 0 supports, 0 help for their kids. Some families are in the middle ground. And then in other cases, depending on where you might have more funding and you might have more support, the DCD diagnosis is falling under what we call OHI, or other health impairment. And in those cases, and in areas with more funding, those kids are getting a great deal of support, and they're doing quite well. That is the challenge that I'm facing here stateside. Part of the action that I would like to see is to have DCD included under our disability law. We need a seat at the table. What has it been like for you in Canada, and what experiences have you had, and what are your thoughts?
So probably very similar experience to your experience. So we live in BC. Now, in BC, DCD does not qualify for designation under the Health Ministry for support in the school system. I am a member of a wonderful parents Facebook group here based in BC, which shares a lot of information, and it would appear that some families, it depends on your school district, some families will be designated for support and some won't. Now, DCD generally comes in under a chronic health impairment designation. However, for my school district, and again, I made myself an appointment for the head of district support to say, why? Why? Can you please explain?
Good.
And they said DCD on its own does not qualify for a designation under the current Ministry of Health guidelines in BC. However, if it did have some sort of comorbidity or another diagnosis, maybe it would, which means that
That's not funny. I'm laughing for a different reason. I'm laughing in frustration so I don't cry on camera.
I hear you. Oh my goodness. So what happens in my school district is that we are not able to get an IEP. However, we have a support plan. Now, a support plan isn't legally enforceable like an IEP would be. It's more a set of guidelines for the teachers and the schools to know that this child needs some support. Here's some of the suggested supports. However, it's not as legally enforceable as, say, an IEP would be. So one of my goals for action would be to try and advocate, to hopefully partner with some researchers and some other parents, and to go back to the ministry and have DCD included to allow a designation for these children, because as we've spoke about in our other conversations, DCD doesn't impact intelligence.
No.
These children are really smart, but what it does impact is the ways that they can show that intelligence. So, for example, for my little guy, he struggles to meet the written output of the classroom. So, particularly as the years go on and the written outputs become higher, we've looked at other tools like talk to text. Can he verbally do assessments, things like that, but without any formal designation. It really does depend on the willingness of the school and the classroom teacher to offer you those supports. And I remember receiving an email from a support teacher one year early in his school career where we had been denied an IEP, and saying, well, he would need a diagnosis that would show that it impacts his ability to communicate and therefore participate fully in the classroom. And I'm like, my child struggles to write. This is a form of communication which impacts his ability to participate in the classroom. So
written communication is still communication last time I checked.
Absolutely. And we're lucky that the school system is shifting and changing, and we have I'm noticing the wonderful and different ways that teachers are allowing the kids to show their learning. Now, like my son was doing PowerPoint presentations for a history thing last year. So he has been allowed to use talk to text. So we are finding that they are open to some of these accommodations, but it would be wonderful if it was formalised, because if it was formalised at a ministry level, then that education would filter down that DCD does impact these kids in a number of different ways, and that their school report cards don't always reflect their intelligence, because they do struggle so mightily to write, keep up with the math problems, these things like that impact them every day.
Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. It just goes back to having that seat at the table.
Yes.
And As we say in counseling, meet the client where they are. We just want someone to meet our child where they are.
Absolutely. And that was something that came out of the DCD conference here in BC. The final day was about advocacy, and the lady who was speaking about advocacy had a wonderful quote from a disability advocate that, and I wish I knew who said it so I could attribute it, but I apologize, I've forgotten. And it was not about us without us, meaning that we need to have a seat at the table to help make these decisions. These decisions can't be made without us. And the research community was discussing that and saying, well, we need the families at the table, because we do the research, but we need to make sure that the research is helping the families and asking the families what they need us to work on as well. So it's wonderful that some of those gaps are being bridged, and people are coming together to work collaboratively.
Yes, well, I think you need to add another A to your website now. You are now ambassador as part of that gap. I think that would be a wonderful title for you to also add there. And I joke and I talk about the titles that we give ourselves and the hats that we wear, but this really is not about us at all. You and I have both shared we are not doing this for personal recognition or personal financial gain. We are just doing this to bring awareness to the condition, and because we're looking ahead, we're looking in the future. Our children won't always be little. They won't always be at home with us. They are going to hopefully go to university one day, and who will accommodate their challenges then?
That's right. And I think that
those are my thoughts. Anyway, he's only 9, but those are my thoughts looking ahead.
Mine too. And I think the self-advocacy piece has been a big piece in our family, is helping my son understand what DCD is and how it impacts him. And then he can self-advocate. So sometimes in PE, if the other kids are giving him a bit of a hard time because he's missed a shot or something like that, he can just say, hey, I'm doing my best. Or there are days when I'll hear him say, oh, my DCD's got the better of me today. And it's a great sort of reset. He stops and he goes, okay, now I'll try again. So to be able to advocate for yourself and for what you need as a person with DCD, I think is really important as well. And to help our kids do that, as when we're not always going to be there with them, as you say, to protect them.
No, we're not. We want to put them in that bubble. And that is actually what we're beginning to do now as well. Focus on moving from advocate to teaching my son to be a self-advocate. And that's probably the hardest part of the journey. Is because it's ongoing, and it's a matter of the heart, but you also have to teach practical tips in with it. And it's hard to kind of align those two together sometimes, but absolutely crucial, absolutely vital moving forward.
I could not agree more.
I was thinking a bit on we were talking earlier about the importance of having a proper diagnosis and proper intervention, and the push to add in a, quote, comorbid diagnosis. There are many diagnoses that are comorbid with DCD, but not always. And that is why it's important to shine a light on and include DCD under the umbrella of the law, so that moving forward, we have supports in place as our children get older, so that they can succeed and not fall through the cracks and have long-term success. And that is what it's all about. And thank you so much for being an ambassador for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to do it.
Well, in the spirit of advocacy, what advice do you have for parents who may be a bit intimidated or a bit hesitant to put on that advocate hat and go to battle for their kids? What would you say?
I would say I feel you. I have been there. I have been there 100%. It's tough. It's tough, but it's necessary, and go for it. My advice would be, have a plan before you go in of what you'd like to say and what outcome you would like for the meeting. But don't hesitate. I've always gone in with a attitude of collaboration, and to say, we are all on Team Thomas, and we're all here to work to help him be the best he can be. And that has been wonderful. I understand from the school, they said a lot of parents feel overwhelmed and they will go in with a report and say, help, what do I do? Whereas I was a little bit different. And sometimes I think that was challenging because it was a little bit out of the ordinary for the school, but I always went in with a plan of what I was hoping to achieve and outcomes. And I think one of the most powerful things for me was when I started my website, I went from being just one mum who was in there advocating for my child to, I would go into a meeting and I would open my page and I would say, okay, I've started a website about this. DCD impacts a lot of kids. Here's some resources. Let's go to the Can Child website and we can print out a one-pager of little small adjustments you can do for every single year group throughout high school. There's a 5-minute YouTube video called Let's Match for Success, which is,
Yes.
it's easy for a student or a teacher to watch a 5-minute YouTube video. We're not asking a big commitment of time here, but to meet them where they're at with a lot of different resources. And for me to say, look, I'm here and I'm advocating for my own child, but these are things that you can help many children in your classroom or your school. It helps shift the conversation. And it has been nothing but positive. So I would say, look, I know it's heartbreaking and it can feel lonely when you suddenly have a diagnosis for your child and you see your child struggling and you want to help them in any way, and it can feel really lonely. But there are allies out there and people are really kind and want to help. So square your shoulders, chin up. Chin up. And,
there you go.
And you can do it. You can do it. Go in there and ask for what you need.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It can be incredibly intimidating when it's not necessarily by design, but it's usually one parent and then a team that you're walking in to meet with at the school. And that can be incredibly intimidating. And you had also shared that you would either have your doctor on the phone or your OT on the phone. And it's just about being prepared. Yes. Read the report that you've been given on your child. Ask the clinician who completed the assessment and the report all of the questions ahead in advance. Make sure that you thoroughly understand what you're going in there for and shift the narrative. Yes. Take that power back. Put the focus on you with grace. Yes. And with kindness. And you're as my grandmother would say, you can lure more bees with honey than you ever can with vinegar.
That is true.
Put a little bit of honey in it, and it will certainly sweeten the deal and bring others, especially to the team, to your side and to support your child, which everyone should be on the same team when it comes to that child. So that's excellent advice. Excellent. Well, looking ahead, it seems like there are some exciting new developments going on for you with the DCD Kids website. Can you give us a little taste of what's to come?
Oh, thank you. So yes, it's always a work in progress. So I'm currently working on a number of different articles, just again, personal experiences that our family has gone through and challenges that we've tackled through part of our DCD journey. So look out for some more personal stories coming up around things like PE in schools, how PE in school can be really tricky, and how physically and socially gaps can widen with our DCD kids. So working on some articles around that to kind of keep the personal stories going. My little guy will be off to high school in the next year.
Oh my
so
goodness.
I'm already thinking about high school transitions and things like that. But I'm also thinking of other ways to expand DCD Kids so we can keep the conversation going, and understanding that people don't always have time to sit down and read a blog post. We're hoping to get more into social media so we can connect with people in different ways and help build community, help bring parents together and keep the conversation going.
Oh, that is absolutely awesome. And I look forward to all of those as well, because your son's just a few years older than mine and very similar. So I'm like, okay, what's coming ahead? What can I look forward to, or what challenges are coming, so that I can, and every child is different and unique, but there are a lot of similarities there. So I look forward to the inspiration and the comfort and the camaraderie that I find when I read those posts from a fellow mom in the trenches.
Thank you so much.
Love having you as our October Salt and Light Spotlight. What you are doing for the DCD community is absolutely beautiful, and I hope you continue to just grow.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you so much for the opportunity to collaborate.
Thank you.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you for your time today. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you found comfort in the words of Sue Hille. I take solace in knowing there is another mama out there willing to fight the good fight and step outside of her comfort zone for the greater good. The good of not only her own child, but countless others as well. I am grateful to have found a fellow advocate in Sue, but I am more thankful to have found a friend. I look forward to all of the beautiful ways DCD kids can and will grow. The It's Only Homeschooling podcast airs on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. Topics include the Salt and Light Spotlight, advocacy, mental health, relaxation, teaching tips, parenting, encouragement, and outreach, wrapped in humor with a whole lot of faith. Coming up, November is Adoption Awareness Month. Join us on November 9th and 23rd for episodes 6 and 7, where we feature our November Salt and Light Spotlight and share some ways you and your family can celebrate Adoption Awareness Month in your homeschool. Tune in to us on Podbean, YouTube, or our website at itsonlyhomeschooling.com to listen. With the It's Only Homeschooling podcast, we invite your family to join ours for life lessons beyond the classroom. We hope you'll make us one of your regular stops along the way in your journey. And remember, education is a journey, not a destination. Until we meet again, take a deep breath and relax. It's only homeschooling.